I just want to talk to you briefly today about, I guess, in a sense, the animation industry. So, how things are now in the situation of the whole disruption that we have going on with 2020, 2021, and how, as long as you have the core animation skills, you can take your animation and go into films, TV, commercials, video games. Okay. So that's what my little presentation is going to be about. So feel free to ask questions at any point. So we're going to just be flowing. It's not going to be a lot of me just talking. So if you want to ask anything, just jump in and ask. Okay. So let me share my screen. So just have this image up here. And it's just roughly to show you how, even though there's a lot of things going on right now, as long as you can animate, as long as you've got the skills for character animation, that is creature animation, there's a lot of work out there. All right. So it might seem at first like, oh my gosh, it's a crazy time. And it is. But as long as you can animate, you'll find even yourself, you guys are going watching a lot of Netflix, say Disney Plus, a lot of streaming services. So you'll see that there's a lot of things going on. If you watch those shows, you look at the credits, you can see a lot of different places, a lot of different studios that are actually animating right now. Okay. So I just wanted to show you that. But even here, you'll see just a quick little lineup of what Netflix, just Netflix alone, have got 3D animation going on, but also a lot of anime. So whether you're into 2D, 3D, there's a lot going on. Let me quickly look at this chat. That's one thing though, when you do a chat, it's quite hard when it bounces up. But then, so yeah, there's a lot going on. So what I really want to do here is show you what it's like going into animation from different perspectives. So if you're looking at, say, previous, I'm going to show you a previous reel that was for Avengers Endgame. And you guys can get a feel of how deep and how complex things are from previous stage. So you're looking at where you've got to do the cameras, you got to get the characters working and things like that. So let me just show you a previous reel for Avengers, and then I'll get back to you and start talking. So, like I said, I wanted to show you this previous reel for the simple fact of a lot of stuff right now is all CG. It's 2D. So with films being in a situation where it's hard to do a lot of filming right now because of social distancing and lockdown and things like that. So you're not able to get the live action part of a film being made or being created at the moment. But as you can see from this previous here, everything that you see in this reel is all CG. And this is the stage where it's done before the director does all the camera works physically. So in this stage, if you're looking at previous, so this is an area you wanted to try to get into. You're getting to learn about cinematography, you're getting to learn about creating the films from camera work to getting the characters in the scene. And like I said, it's all CG. So there's no worries or concerns about, oh, we've got to get this dialogue from a certain character, or we need to get this camera angle done physically. It's all in a Maya or whatever software that's being used. So the characters are then created, all CG. Obviously, these are looking like the actors because there's been several previous shows before, so they know what the models are, they know who the characters are. And it's at this stage where all the complex acting or action, should I say, has been developed. So previous is taking it from a 2D storyboard aspect and bringing it to 3D and letting us know how it should be before we start filming. So this is a great area to look at and go, hold on, all these films, they're still being made, and this is the beginning stage of it, okay? So when you're looking to go into animation, you think to yourself, is it an area that I can get into? Is it an area that's got a future to it? Then this alone in previous can show you and let you know there's so much going on, all right? So it is one of those areas that's quite healthy. All right, so let me just load up. So you might say, yeah, okay, previous, that's one thing that's film and whatnot. But we also have games. So with video games, you have your in-game areas, but you also have your cinematics. So I'm just going to play one cinematic just for you guys. There's loads of cinematics out there, but I'm just going to choose this one. This is one that I actually worked on, which I did last summer. And this was actually done for the Magic the Gathering. So let me just quickly play it. It's not too long. It's about a minute.
This will change Zendikar forever. Careful.
We need to leave! Now!
So I'm going to stop it right there and just double check what questions been asked. So I'm going to take that question into account, but I'm not going to play all this because it actually feels longer than I remember. But with this, just even this with us doing cinematics, if I just go through, a lot of this is a mocap base, and then we work keyframe on top. So a lot of these characters, again, if you're working with mocap, you've got a mocap shoot. So there's not a lot of people that need to be around. You've got the actors, social distance still can happen. So we've got these three main stars, these three main characters acting out. So like I said, we would keyframe on top, making sure that they feel like they're in the environment and doing all of the actions that are needed for, you know, swinging across here, interacting with the rope and stuff like that. But again, like I said, doing cinematics, again, it's all CG, so it allows you to be able to do characters that don't need to be filmed in that sense, okay? I'm just scrubbing through it. See how her face. She's looking happy there. But it's just one of those things of knowing that, all right then, so you want to get into video games, the in-game work is there, but also, like I said, cinematics and animation itself. You're also going to be looking at doing all this facial expressions and making sure that it's not just the body and character performance in the body itself, but you're also going to have to look at working out face expressions, making sure that the emotions are coming through in the face and things like that. Okay, and it's not just the animated something like this. You're looking at all the other departments. So the reason why I'm going from visual effects and then I'm going into something like this as cinematic, you can see there's so much effects also in a project like this. So even though you're looking at yourself as being an animator, you're working with other people that are doing the effects for this, all this environment work that comes together to make this shot and to make this whole cinematic piece come together. All right. So it's not just a case of an animator does everything themselves. They also work in a team, making sure that all departments are working together in order to make this happen. All right. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because some people feel like they need to do everything themselves. Like you go and you study animation, you think, all right, if I study animation, that means I have to model the character, I have to rig the character, then I have to light the character after I've animated it. But the thing is, when you're looking at animation, you want to try to find a discipline in it that suits your sensibility. So if you like to do character performance, you like to animate, then yes, look at animation as you want to be the animator and do that part of it. Or if you think to yourself, no, I prefer to create these models, then look at that, look at creating models, look at building characters and stuff like that. All right. So there's definitely, not only is there different areas to go as an animator, there's different areas to go within animation. Okay. That scary face. And then I'll just try and scroll forward. So then I also have this character here, which is the elemental, this character here. So this project there was about, I think about 7 animators on it. It's quite a small team. And this character, this monster was all keyframe, so that was nice. One of the animators came on board and he was doing mainly the elemental stuff. I did a few shots. In fact, I did this shot with the elemental. Another animator jumps in.
Is this what you want?
Does some stuff here. And what you'll find is with this particular show, with this project, should I say, they changed the audio at the end. So you might watch this and you go, yeah, it looks good. But then all of a sudden you'll see the mouth shapes. Shouldn't really say this, but there's a moment where we see she speaks and we had a certain audio, but then once the show came out or once it got aired, we watched it and they obviously changed what she was saying at the last minute. And these things happen. Sometimes you're animating to something, a certain dialogue, and they change it. You know, you might have watched or heard about shows like Paddington where they changed the voice from, what was it, Colin Firth or something like that, and it became who it is now. So they sometimes change the voice on people, and you've got to somehow adjust to it. In this case, we couldn't because it was changed at the last minute. Okay, I thought I'd just give you that little bit of info. So as I'm jumping back and forth, so let me just read this. How often would you say you do a run cycle for characters and put them along a path when blocking out scenes? So for me, you always have to do walk cycles, run cycles. They're the first thing you have to kind of do for your characters, whether it's in video games, whether it's in films, because you need to know how your character's moving. You need to know the personality of the character. And as we all know, if you look at your friend or family members or anyone you know, the way they walk is very unique. The way they run is very unique. So that's the way you get the personality through your character, is through the walk and through the run cycle. Okay. Now, in terms of putting them on a path, I don't actually put stuff on a path, to be fair. It's mostly block it out, get the walk moving, and then find out where it needs to go within the scene and move it to that in that sense. I don't actually put the walk cycles on path. People do things different ways, so some might put it on a path, but yeah, I don't actually use paths. Okay, might not be very helpful in that sense, but yeah, I get the walk down, try to figure out where you're going with your scene, and then put your character going through like that. All right. Another question, this one's from Ashley. Are there any books online or online literature you would recommend for YouTube stuff for learning about how to do character animation? Well, in fairness, I'm not a big fan of trying to learn on YouTube. I would definitely recommend books like, actually, let me stop sharing. I don't know if you guys can see my screen or not. So let me, if you can see behind me. So let me just go. If my books don't drop. See if you can see this. Oh, it's a bit too light. So it's called The Illusion of Life with Pinocchio on the front. Why am I showing you that in live? I could actually go online and show you even better. So let me share my screen to answer this question. So books that you definitely want to get for animation, you need to get The Illusion, not The Illusionist, The Illusion of Life. This is testing my typing skills. This book is a must, okay? So The Illusion of Life. I don't know how many of you have heard of this book, but definitely get this. And then you want to also get Richard Williams' The Survival Kit, okay? Those are the two books I would totally recommend, all right? YouTube channels, there's a lot out there, but I'm not a big, like I said, I'm not a big fan of going on YouTube to try and learn, because sometimes there's certain steps that they go through, that A to B to C, and then all of a sudden you find that how did they get to this stage C, but they never showed you the middle stages. So I would definitely just recommend looking at those books, Richard Williams, Survival Kit, and The Illusion of Life. Okay, let me stop sharing for a minute. I'm going to scroll down to Vishal Singh. Hello, sir. How can we make life like animation to make them believable or just appealing rather than bland? So there's a lot of things, like that's a question that's quite broad, in the sense of when you learn about animation, you're looking at making sure you've got appeal, making sure it's expressive and it feels, basically you're looking at animation styles that are appealing to you, but also think to yourself, why does it appeal to you? Do you enjoy what can I say? Animaniacs? Do you enjoy anime? Do you enjoy, what is the style that you find appealing? And then you can kind of break that down and look at reasons why it seems entertaining to you. How does it draw you in? And that way you can kind of reverse engineer it and say, well, this is what I enjoy about it. And that's what I want to show in my work. So if I'm looking at, I've got over there, if I look at Spawn and think to myself, what is it about Spawn that I really like? The style of animation, the cloak, the action poses, the really dynamic poses that I see in that. I want to put that in my work. I want to make sure that that's what I'm expressing and putting forward. And that way you're going to make sure the work you produce has that kind of element to it. Okay, so look at the posing, look at the dynamics, look at the timing as well, the way it's moving, and that will give you your appeal, basically. Bland animation, like animation's art, so it's very, very much a case of, how can I say, it's subjective. So what might be bland to you might actually be amazing to somebody else. Okay, so you got to think of what you are in touch with and then bring that out in the work that you're producing. Hopefully that makes some kind of sense. Okay, so here we go. On the cinematic, how much motion capture and how much was keyframe? So on that cinematic, that was one of the ones where it's very heavily mocapped. Those 3 characters, they would have shot them in the mocap studio, got a lot of really strong mocap going on, got it sent to another team who was done like motion editing and would have cleaned up that mocap, got a lot of it working. Then they would have sent it to us as the motion as animators, and then we would have to incorporate different kind of movements. So if they have a specific run, like you saw them running, we would tweak it just a bit, making sure that the contacts on the floor are working, making sure that when they're holding the spears and things like that, that they're actually physically gripping it properly. And it's kind of like you're touching it up, but also their facial, we've got to animate that from scratch. There's no actual face animation there. Sometimes there is. Sometimes they go ahead and motion capture the face, but most of the time when you put that on, it's not going to work. So they need keyframe animators to go in there, get what was existing and reconfigure that. Okay, so there's a lot of give and take. Some shots you might find it's like, say, 70% mocap, and then you got to do the animation on top. And some of them you've got to, the motion capture just doesn't work, it breaks. So with that sense, you got to go in there and go back to scratch and try to really rebuild what was intent, the intent of the shot, rebuild it to make it feel like it's still motion capture, basically. All right, so there's a lot of back and forth. All right, when I'm talking, I'm hoping that this makes sense. Okay, so hi Michael. Typically, this is TK. Typically in a professional environment, would the animator model the characters props, an environment, etc. from scratch, concept designs, or would they receive finished models and rigs? So as an animator, especially for me, everything we get the character and the rig already created. All right. So we're the person that's in the production that takes your character that's already rigged. So the bones and everything's already in there, and we'll bring that to life. Okay. Before I started out back in 2000, we animators would, especially in video games, animators used to build the actual model, rig the character, and then animate it. Nowadays, you call that a generalist. So generalists will come in with the ability to model. They have the ability to rig and also animate and also do lighting. Now, as you can see, that's quite a broad, amount of skills to have. It's good to have those skills, but at the same time, nowadays, studios want you to be able to just focus on one of those skills. So if you can model, that's great. You can do that as a single focus. If you can rig, focus. If you can animate, focus. Lighting, focus. But if you can do all, then you can, spoil them back is, if you can do all those things, you can actually go into previs. So I kind of skated over that, but with previs, if you can model and rig and all of that, previs is ideal because that allows you to do all that in that arena. Okay. The more kind of skills you have, then previs is something that you can definitely play with a lot more. But as you go into games, as you go into films, doing the post-viz, which is the post-production, it's very specialized. Okay. So you can always think to yourself, do I want to be a focused individual who only specializes on animation? Okay. Games, post. But if I really want to try my hand with creating a shot and being able to build models, like if the character needs a weapon, I need to quickly build a weapon there or an asset, then go into previs. Okay. So it's up to you if you want to be focused or if you want to kind of be a generalist. Okay. All right. So we got Ian here saying, do you think this process was used in a Scanner Darkly? So Scanner Darkly is Keanu Reeves, yeah? And Woody Harrelson, I think. And that was 2D. So that wasn't, I'm sure it was 2D. That was more about rotoscope. So it's like the film footage is there and they just draw it over it through the whole film. Okay. So that would have been, live action and literally drawing over the film. Okay. Okay, I'm going to answer this question by Vishal. One more question. Where do you see the animation industry heading towards in the upcoming ages? Do you think the students who are enrolled in studying animation pick up any additional skills apart from animation and mocap to survive in the industry? So animation is it's always evolving, okay? And right now, it seems like a lot of things are going into Unreal Engine and stuff like that, where you can see virtual reality, augmented reality. But if I go back to the Unreal Engine, a lot of people are making big, epic kind of projects where it's not just your traditional movie that you watch now. It feels like you're more involved, you're more, you're seeing the characters being created and environments created in real time. So that I feel definitely right now, a lot of work is looking into doing real time work. And what I mean by real time is, you physically, what have I done? You've got your camera set up and you can physically go around the screen like that and see the animation that you're doing created. So you're creating your animation in Maya and you've got live cameras that the director can use to physically go around your scene and try to build the best camera for that. So that in a sense is going to change the way films are being made. If you think or talk to people that were working on the previous for Lion King, that was done in that way where you're doing your animation. And most of the time, if I spin back, most of the time when you're making a film, like, me and you guys, we're all 2D, we're looking at our screen, it's a flat image. So if we animate, we know we're animating to that flat image. We know we're animating to the screen, okay? With video games, we're animating 3D all around us. So we're doing an animation, we've got the camera, and it can go anywhere, all right? So if my animation looks good to camera, it's also got to look good at the side, the front, the back, the top, everything. Now with films, if they're doing this live camera that can go around all areas, now our animation has to be, in a sense, like a video game. It has to look good from every angle. Whereas before in films, you could cheat it and just make it look good to that camera. So in a sense, as an animator now, you've got to really be able to do your work from all angles. And then once the angle of the camera has been selected, then you can work on top to make it look even better for that particular angle. All right. So kind of answering a bit, I think. So that's where I think a lot of the animation is going, where you definitely have to make sure that it's able to work in a virtual setting. Okay. In terms of motion capture is getting more advanced, but it's working alongside animation. So it's not going to be something that you can just get your motion capture, plug it in, and it's going to be 100%. That's not there yet. And as an animator, you don't really want it to be there. You want it to be a case of, okay, you got motion capture, but as an animator, the reason why the animator is involved is they're going to bring it to the next level. So if we talk about things like, say, Planet of the Apes, it would have been, the performance is done by the actors. They always talk about they did the performance, and it's true to their performance. But you got to think to yourself, they're humans. Now we've got to transfer that human skill and that human performance onto an ape. Different proportions, different kind of limbs and stuff like that. You might think, oh yeah, it's walking and everything the same. It's still going to have longer arms, short legs. It's just got a totally different feel to it. So the animators have got to bring that and make it feel effortless on a different kind of skeleton. The facials. So when you're looking at Andy Serkis, he doesn't look anything like Caesar. He's got the same eyes and all this kind of furrow and this angry look. But you try and transfer his animation directly onto Caesar, it's not going to work. You've got to get animators who are involved again and do their thing on top to make sure that now Caesar feels like a living, breathing creature. All right. It's not just about copy and paste and put it on. That doesn't work. So it's like always making sure that, as an animator, you go in there. Yes, you're working with mocap for that particular project, but you still need to know the principles. You need to know, if you're going into face animation, you need to know, you don't need to go so deep to know exactly all the muscles, but you have to understand squash and stretch and get an idea and start learning about anatomy, start learning about facial features, expressions, and things like that. So the more I talk about it, the more I realize and feel that animation is something that whatever area you decide to go into, it's very much a case of learning that area. So if you're going into video games, understanding video games, understanding the constraints of video games, the difference between video game, working with the user, keep putting my hands up. You've got your pad, your joypad, if you're still calling that. But you got your console, you got your controller, everything like that. The user's going to be pressing those buttons. They want to make sure that this character is responding as soon as you actually press that button. I don't know how many of you guys remember a game called Dragon's Lair, Don Blue, back in the days. You press that button once, then your character does all of this movement. Amazing, it looks really nice. But then you press it again, doing all of this movement. So it's not really like a jumping around and pressing and like intuitive and feels like it's a nice how games are today. But that was a game that you basically just watching a video and you press now and again. We don't want to play games like that. We want to feel like we're involved. We want to feel like it's responsive to us. We're the user, we're the player. Okay. So with that being said, with games, it needs to be interactive. It needs to be cycles, vignettes, and stuff like that. Okay. We'll jump to the next question. Bit like Ralph Back. Yeah, exactly. So how do you get good silhouette in games when it can be seen from any angle? And that is one of the things for cinematics, they try and play with obviously getting the silhouettes. But when it comes to the game itself, you see the guy, it's called GTA, all these games, you always have a character running all the time. They're running Last of Us and everything. You've seen them from behind, but you can see to a degree when they turn around. But it's just, how can I say, the main focus is making sure that once you're doing your cycles, they have, just having clean silhouettes. So obviously the character's not stuck together, their bodies, making sure they've got some good breathing space, and you can see, how can I just say, not line of action, but just seeing between the body parts, okay? Just making sure that the character's not just one big blob, okay? Looking at it and going, it's going to be seen from this angle. It can be seen 360, but it's more than just the silhouette. It's just about making sure that everything just looks clean and clear, all right? It's a bit tricky to explain that exactly, but it's just making sure that you're looking at it and going, I'm looking at this fight sequence, or I'm looking at this combat move, spin it around, camera around it. How does it look? How does it feel? It feels clean, it feels precise. And that's the way they go forward on that. All right? Boom, boom. On previous, how much creativity can you do? So this is asked by Joseph. When you go to previous is probably the most creative part of the of filmmaking, in the sense that it's the beginning. So as you can imagine, if it's the beginning of making a film, the storyboard is just 2D panels, okay? You've got this scribbled out 2D panel, and the director wants this fight between, let's just jump. How I got that back up there. Let's throw that back up. What I should have done was shown you the previous for Artemis Fowl, and then shown you the stuff that we did, and you could then see the difference. But shoulda, coulda, woulda, it's one thing. So let me just kind of grab. So even this, so you say how much creativity you have. So what would have happened is the 2D element of this would be, they would have drawn in their characters, and they would know, all right, we need Spider-Man, Mantis, Doctor Strange, and if I can even remember my guy's name. So we would need we need these four coming out of the ring. And as you can imagine, a 2D panel can only show one image. So they would have drawn the specific image, but you've got to think to yourself, well, how does Spider-Man come into the shot? Okay. Also, they need Quill to come through this gate here. So how many drawings are they going to really need to start doing this? And as you know, with storyboards, you can't draw every element or every aspect of it. So they're going to have their key panels, but as someone doing previs, you're going to need to know how your cameras are going to go from one place to the next. So how do you go from this shot and then focus on Quill? So you need to know how the camera's going to work. you're also going to need to know, how am I going to move this camera and how am I going to get it to work with this character in order to make sure we've got the focus here, which is Quill, but also we know that there's a battle going on and other portals or whatever they're called are happening around at the same time. So there's a lot that's got to be, a lot of questions that you've got to answer. You know, a lot of characters, especially with this, all these characters that are got to be center stage. So we know, all right, Black Panther is center stage, but we need to know that Groot is in there, all these characters as well, all coming out of their portal. So everything has to read. All right. And again, what I was saying about working to camera, as you know, working to camera, we can definitely get this to work as a nice silhouette. All right. But at the same time, when you start looking at storyboards and then creating that into 3D, how are we going to make all this read where it becomes like Lord of the Rings and all these characters are starting to take up the scene, and there's key characters positioned in places that the audience needs to know where they're going to look. So we're looking at Thanos, we know he's there, but then we need to know, is this Loki and all of these kind of characters and this one coming forward. In the storyboard, it's going to tell you one thing, but you need to then know how you're going to make sure certain characters are going to stand out more than others. So your eyes are in the right place, okay? And this is why storyboards and then going into previs, a lot of creative licenses there, because there's going to be a lot of playing around with cameras. What's the best way in order to bring these characters to the scene so the audience can see what they're doing, so the action is not so overbearing? And, you know, you've watched films where you don't know where to look, you don't know what's going on. It's Born Identity 10, you know, the camera's moving, the person's moving, you just don't understand. Whereas previs is that point in time where you can experiment, you can play with how these different things are going to work, okay? You might notice as well in some of these previs, some of the characters might have been in previs, but by position, it's all changed, all right? And that's because films, they change over time. You know, you've heard about films are made. Hold on. Actually, I think I'm not even sharing my screen. Let me just double check. All right. So can anyone speak to me? Tell me, was I sharing my screen then, or was I just, I'm not sure. Let me just double check. Boom, boom, boom. So I'm going to pretend I think I was, but it's just a case of making sure that everything is coming through the camera. All right, so I'm just kind of going to just replay what I was just saying, making sure that, here we go, knowing what the camera's going to be, who's going to be focused and things like that. All right, that's what you need to know when you're doing previs and getting that creative license. All right, it's one thing once you're just talking and not checking if you're sharing your screen. Okay, cool. So yeah, it's one of those things, definitely got creative license within that. All right. What I want to show you actually, since I just mentioned it, was, I don't know how many of you guys, have you guys seen a film called Artemis Fowl? Heard of it? So let me just go into this. This is not the previs, this is the actual, like I was working at Artemis Fowl, working with a team there, and here's a little bit of a sequence that we worked on where it had a CG character. So again, it's one of those things of, a lot of these films you'll notice have a lot of CG characters. And with that being said, They do the previews, like I mentioned with Avengers. You got your storyboard, you go into previews, and then you take it into filming, then you come into post. Well, this is a film that we did where the character that's chasing these kids is CG. So when they do the filming, let's just play it. So that everything is live action, but the character that's chasing them is CG. And sometimes this fairy, she's CG as well. Just play it quickly.
I'll distract him.
Help! I'm stuck! Mulch! Help! Juliet, look out! It's okay, I got this! Juliet, run!
Ah, Juliet! Ah!
Come and get some, you think we need it? Help! Quick!
I'm reaching! I could use a little help!
Okay then. So for instance, I just wanted to quickly show you this because just to show you a difference between, say, visual effects and for a video game. So if you're working on a video game, everything you know is CG. But when you do get into the post-production where they have done filming and they've got a live action character interacting with a CG character. So say something like this here. This is the live action character interacting with a CG character, which is the troll. When it gets to this, they actually change this character. So we think this is live. This is actually a CG version of the actor because he's interacting with this CG giant troll. So at first, you have several takes. You have first, they have the real actor. I can't write on this. So they have him real. But then after they realize, you know what, it looks like a cardboard cutout and we need to make sure we copy the real actor's performance. And then that's kind of constrains us, restricts us to make this troll have to then copy him. Whereas you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you can have the troll, the CG character, be in control. He can run, wrestle around back and forth. And the only way you can make this be the case is if this is fully CG and this guy then becomes full CG. Okay? So that's how they get around where it looks like a real actor interacting with CG and he gets thrown like that. Because as you all know, if that was the real actor getting thrown like that, the insurance would be pretty high. So that's all CG there. Okay. Some parts of it, I'm just going to quickly spin back. So, you see the CG character here throwing this guy. Again, if that was a live action, it would be pretty dangerous. Okay, so all that CG. And just those kind of interactions, making sure that they feel seamless, where the CG and the real actor are interacting.